We spend most of our lives navigating in a way where we're constantly vigilant, right? This is kind of a built-in safety mechanism as animals. But in particular, being a social being, one of the things that we tend to be really vigilant around is, how am I being perceived? Because of course, we have a fundamental need to belong, to be accepted. And it's very, very deep in our DNA of being social animals, and our survivalship, maybe more in the past, but I think still true today, is about being part of a group. And rarely do we have a time or a place in our lives, in particular if we live with other people, where we can completely let go of any kind of trying whatsoever and just let ourselves fully relax. And so last week I talked about that meditation can be that safe place. And what I mean by safety is that it's the place where you can come completely undone and not need to justify it or explain it or hide it or alter it in any way. It is truly the safe place within ourselves where we can go. In addition to that, if we are paying attention non-judgmentally, if we are just witnessing and watching ourselves, there is a deep need for being seen, witnessed, accepted, permitted to, that's met. And so this is what I was talking about in terms of safety last week. It's not that, we might have emotions that don't feel safe within the meditation space, but it's the place where we can experience that without much consequence. Because if I were to, for example, be around people and start crying, somebody would come out and try to help me. And what I mean by help me is intervene with me going through that experience. Well intended, yet not accepted, not allowed. Or I would be vigilant and now I'd be worried about bothering them or what my impact is on them. I wouldn't be able to make full contact with what I'm experiencing. And so this is a reframe, because oftentimes when the suggestion is sit every day and meditate, people think of like, oh gosh, I have to sit, I have to pay attention to my breath, and it's just this unbearable thing. And the reason why we feel that way is that we are doing meditation, right? It's just another doing to our list. It's just another thing that we have to get done in order to achieve something, whatever that be. And it's not true for everybody, but a lot of people see it this way, in particular in our Western culture. And the reframe I want to offer is that nothing needs to happen in meditation. It's the one place that we can come undone and be held and witnessed. Just having the freedom to be 100% ourselves is healing. Even if we were to just spend a few minutes a day of quiet privacy, uninterrupted by a task or an expectation or somebody physically coming into our space, what it allows us to do is it allows us to unwind in a very, very deep way. In a way that is not offered a lot of times in our day-to-day. And this is what I've been meaning when saying that I'm not really sure what the process is. It doesn't matter even if you're disassociated the whole time. It's not the point. It's that what we're doing is we are offering space and time for our nervous system to unwind, for experiences that we've been bombarded with to be processed, to integrate. It doesn't even matter if we're conscious or not. And for some of us, it's even better for us to not be conscious, because if we're conscious, we're going to interfere.
Mm-hmm.
And so another thing that people do in meditation, in myself in particular included, is to evaluate, oh, that was a good meditation, or that wasn't a good meditation, or I was disassociated the whole time. You know, I was just locked in this like compulsive thinking. And again, that anything that is happening, to view it in two ways. One is trust that the system is doing whatever it needs to do in that moment to take care of you. So while, of course, we want awareness, sometimes the wise thing in the moment is to be completely unaware and disassociated. Why? Because the energy that's moving through us is too much. It's like the nervous system is starting to release, and we're starting to make contact with it, and it's just unbearable. And so the protective mechanism is to shut it off and pull away. And there's nothing wrong with that. Know that when the system is resourced, it will come back into awareness. So there's not a whole lot that we're doing. We're mostly just holding space. The other reframe that we can use is that anything that happens is an opportunity to see clearly what is the mechanism of phenomena. The particular tradition of meditation that I'm teaching is insight meditation, or Vipassana. And Vipassana means clear seeing. And so it doesn't matter what's happening. If I'm drifting to sleep, or if I'm in obsessive thinking, or if I'm disassociating, I am having the intention to meet that with interest and curiosity, to see what is this thing that my consciousness does. And again, not with the intention of trying to get something out of it, but just more of the fascination that, wow, we are human beings. We are incredibly complex. We come with consciousness somehow, this miracle of awareness. And we're never taught how to navigate this human experience. And so in meditation, regardless of what's happening, it's an opportunity for us to see and to learn. And it's in the seeing that we become free. Because most of how we're navigating is based on assumptions. Based on assumptions that the mind has taken a few data points and has stitched it together into an explanation or a story. And while that's really helpful, the assumptions are not always true. And we can observe this happening as we meditate. And when we can really see it happen, and the amount of fabrication that the mind produces, and we see that clearly, all of a sudden we don't fall for it anymore. We don't identify with the story of what's going on. And this is the insight. It's like, this whole time I've been believing the story about myself, and I don't even know where it came from. But there was a core belief around it. And this core belief led to me behaving in all of these particular ways, me strategizing in all of these different ways. And the foundation of it was an assumption. That's not true. And so all of those behaviors fall away. Why? Because we see clearly. Right? So I wanted to give that reframe, because I know that we kind of wandered in a lot of different ways. And I've been using meditation to show all of these different facets of what we can do, right? Making contact with our experience, or training the brain to have more awareness of our physical sensations, or meeting our experience with an attitude of care and compassion, right? So these are all, I don't want to say skills, but they're all different ways of relating to what's going on that does have a fundamental impact on how we perceive reality and does have a fundamental impact on how we feel, how we think, and how we act. So much of what we do is learned behavior, right? And I'm calling that just conditioning in the sense that it happens so fast that we a lot of times don't notice it. And if we do, it's in hindsight. It's like, oh, I did that. And that's one of the fascinating aspects about the brain is how quickly it learns, which is a great feature, of course. It's great that if I just do something repetitively over and over and over, I could be a cello player. I could do anything, really. It's this fascinating aspect that I have. But something that's really interesting also, I've been playing around or thinking about this a lot, is the downside, which is automation. And if I do something frequently, what happens is it becomes automatic that I no longer have consciousness doing it. So an example of this is like brushing my teeth. I brush my teeth every day. When I do it, I don't even know I did it. It's a blackout. And then I come out and I'm, I don't know, somewhere else. And so one of the downsides of that is the loss of mindfulness. Right. So just know that that is a condition, that is a state of being human. And it's kind of good because it would be problematic if we had to pay attention and be intentional about everything we did. Like it would be exhausting, right, to a certain degree. And on the flip side, there are certain things that we might do that we don't even think are a big deal, right? We were talking about last week of guilty pleasures. And I just thought like that would be an easy kind of safe exploration because for the most part, it's pretty harmless. It's like, okay, so what if I watch Netflix? But if it's something that I repeatedly do every time I'm exhausted from a day of work and I just want to check out, which by the way, there's nothing wrong with it. But the part that starts to become problematic is if it's just automatic and I don't even notice that I'm doing it and I'm just lost, right? And the reason why it's problematic is only if you want to have some choice in the matter. Because if you don't care about having choice in the matter, it's not a problem. It's harmless. Right. But everything comes at the expense of. So if I'm doing something, I'm not doing something else. I can only do one thing really at a single time. And so the expense that it comes at is me being with my life. And if I'm okay with not being with my life because I don't really want to be with it in this moment, that actually might be a wise thing. Like I'm super activated. I'm going through a lot of pain just being here right now. Yeah. Check out, no problem. But if it just becomes something that's easy as my escape out so that I don't have to feel anything, I'm not just blocking out the unpleasant, I'm also blocking out my capacity to feel in general. Right. So that's the question, I guess, is that the conditioning could be great, right? There's no bad or wrong. It's just more about context and impact, always. And this can become really tricky to start to discern. I'll share right now that I'm doing a 10-day meditation retreat. And I have not attended any one of the meditation sessions. And the question I have is like, should I do what I want to do? Or should I sit and meditate with everybody else? And again, the inquiry is, well, what's your intention? Well, my intention is to feel present and connected. Okay, well, will you get that with what you want to do? Like, I don't know. Okay, go do it and check it out. And if I don't get that, I'm like, okay, maybe I do want to sit. right? But muscling ourselves or disciplining ourselves to be with an experience when we don't want to, just out of the sheer, like, I committed to doing this, so I'm going to do this, is not necessarily wise, right? It's forcing myself to. It's putting pressure, it's putting expectation. My system will not land if I'm resisting it strongly. Right. So you start getting into some territory where not so sure. What should I do? And a big part of this is that we don't need to know. That's the beautiful part. Because as long as we stay aware and pay attention, we will find out. Because you'll try something, that's life, it's trial and error, and then you'll see what the impact is. And that will inform you. That will help start to calibrate how much of my inner voice should I trust? And what I have found is that those sits that I did not join the group, and I decided that instead I wanted to have a tea and sit in the backyard and just like watch the clouds going by, is what I needed. I needed spaciousness. I needed to not be doing another thing. And in that spaciousness, what happened is I dropped deeply without trying to pay attention to anything, without trying to connect, without trying to be present. I just allowed myself, I gave permission to do what I wanted to do. And what that did was it catalyzed something inside. And what bubbled up was a deep, 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 deep sorrow, right? Around, a broken relationship that I have with one of my siblings. And in that moment, again, if I were to stay with a meditation, which is just sit here and drink your tea and just watch the clouds, I would have missed out on this. In that moment came the impulse to get my journal and start writing a letter to my brother asking for forgiveness. It's not to say I'm going to send it, but I'm following impulse. And again, when the system, when our being is given the opportunity to do what it actually wants to do, you would be surprised as to how you actually don't need to direct the experience. Because given the freedom, your body, your system will do what it naturally wants to do and complete whatever was not complete before because we interfered or we stopped with the process. And so again, does it matter if I went and sat with a meditation group? No, it doesn't matter. Because who knows what would have happened had I sat with a meditation group? Maybe something else would have happened. And so that also relieves a little bit of the pressure that we constantly think like we need to know, right, to make the right decision. And yes, we do. There are a lot of decisions in our lives that we actually do need to have a little bit more solidity versus just like, oh, just try it out. Like, I'm trying to buy a house. Oh, should I just buy one and see what happens? Probably not the best way to go, right? So we can start playing around with small things, small choices. And I know I'm kind of like meandering right now, but I'm thinking about the conversation that I had a few weeks ago where some of you have expressed like, I don't know what I want. I don't know which way to go. And that's because we've always interfered and gotten in the way. And if it wasn't us, it was something else, like our schedule or people depending on us. And that a big part of the practice, in the way I like to teach it, is you finding your inner voice and repairing that trust that has been broken. That I think a big part of our spiritual journey is just self-repair, that we don't trust our decisions, we don't trust ourselves, and we go to the external world for that. And look where that's taken us. Right? And then we blame them, right? Where it was a choice the entire time. And from being in that position of being a victim, then, it's over, right? There's nothing we can do. But what we can start doing is taking responsibility that everything for the most part is a choice. I know that some things are a little bit have less of a range of possibilities for choices, but everything that we do is a choice. Minimally, how we relate to what's happening is always a choice. And to start to give ourselves the space and the time and the permissiveness for that side of ourselves, the body, the emotions, our childlike nature, to go for expression. And this kind of ties back to the interfering, because generally there is some kind of interference that comes in, whether it be our mind of like, oh, I shouldn't be wasting my time doing this, or what am I getting out of this, or is this the right decision, right? There's always that kind of interfering. What if we were to just step back and follow the impulse a little bit and see where that takes us? Small impulses don't have to be big, don't have to have a lot of consequence. And in a sense, what we're doing is we are reconditioning ourselves. Whereas the condition before was to follow a set of assumptions with these habituated habits that we don't even think about anymore. And now what we're doing is we're putting a pause and we're questioning, starting to question. And that allows more awareness to the surface. When you make an inquiry, all of a sudden there's interest and there's the attention pointed in what we're wanting to know. And there's more energy and awareness available to actually see.